Hungry to dig into what lunch looked like in each state during the 70s? Montana's Bison Burger was the original protein powerhouse, but let's not start a beef with Texas. With that sizzle out of the way, let's grill into the details. From the heart of Alabama come the fried chicken and biscuits that hold a significant place in soul food restaurants. Battered chicken, deep fried in oil to achieve a perfect golden brown crust paired with fluffy biscuits, were the new favorite dish across Alabama in the 1970s. From roadside cafes to diners across the state, chefs put this dish on the menu for an affordable price in the 70s. Alaska reindeer sausage was unlike any sausage America had ever seen, so it is no wonder that this grilled reindeer sausage that was served in a bun with sauerkraut became a go-to lunch for people. The lunch was especially served in summers when several vendors and restaurants started grilling a mix of beef, pork, and reindeer meat on a bun with sauerkraut. Not much is known about the Arizona cheese crisp, besides the fact that cheese crisps are beloved appetizers served during lunchtime. A rather peculiar dish made out of an open-faced flour tortilla that is covered in shredded cheese was extremely popular amongst Mexican restaurants in Arizona. Unlike cheese crisps, the chicken and dumpling soup from Arkansas is a healthier and filling meal that was popularized in the 1970s. A soup created from cooking chicken in water and using the remaining broth to boil dumplings emerged as the new comfort food for people across Arkansas. Talking about budget lunches, the Cobb salad from California was a popular dish amongst people in search of a healthy salad. Cobb salad originated from the Brown Derby restaurant in Los Angeles after the chef realized he had not eaten in a while. Throwing together random ingredients, he created a salad that everyone would eat after a long day. It seems eggs were pretty popular in the 70s, as Colorado's Denver omelet is next on our list. An omelet filled with diced ham, onions, bell peppers, and cheese was originally served on bread as a sandwich in Western America. Somewhat inspired by the egg foo young, the Denver omelet eventually developed into a breadless, only egg dish that was thoroughly enjoyed in Colorado as a lunch meal. The list would be incomplete without mentioning America's beloved lunch sandwiches. Grinders from Connecticut were popular in the 1970s as a go-to lunch for many corporate workers during their breaks. Popping up at local diners and delis, Grinders was a long sandwich filled with deli meats, cheese, and vegetables. Continuing the sandwich trend onto Delaware, the locals created a unique recipe called crab cake sandwiches. People instantly adopted the sandwich as a favorable lunch to eat in work breaks. Delaware crabs recipes often get overlooked because Maryland and Chesapeake Bay are more famous in terms of seafood. Onto the Cuban sandwich, which first appeared in Florida and rose in ranks as a favorite lunch food. You could say the sandwich literally came from Cuba, as in the 1900s, Ybor City in Florida witnessed a huge influx of Cuban immigrants. They brought along Cuban sandwiches with them and started selling them in the state. Taste-wise, the sandwich was outwardly, so it is really no surprise people welcomed this lunch onto their lunch tables. Georgia's lunch special in the 1970s was the pimento cheese sandwich. Simply put, it was a sandwich filled with a creamy, tangy pimento cheese spread created using shredded cheese, mayo, and diced red pimentos. Pimento cheese was especially famous in Georgia because there was a surge in commercial advertisements of the spread in the state. Stepping aside from sandwiches, states like Hawaii preferred heartier meals like a plate lunch. Plate lunches were typically a meal consisting of rice, macaroni salad, and a meat entree. Customers would get several meat options like teriyaki chicken or Kahlua pork. It was somewhat akin to modern-day Chinese takeout, but localized for Hawaii. Idaho particularly loves their potatoes, so it's no surprise that the potato soup was their favorite lunch. With a staggering 300,000 acres of potatoes produced in the 1970s, Idaho locals explored what they could make with the influx of potatoes. In comes the potato soup, a creamy soup made with Idaho potatoes served with bacon and cheese. The sandwiches never lost their hold on America, as the Italian beef sandwich started showing up on menus in the 1970s in Illinois. The sandwich was a mix of thinly sliced roast beef with au jus and giardiniera served on an Italian roll. Sounds fancy, right? Well, that is exactly how locals in Illinois thought. Indiana took fancy to another level with their breaded pork tenderloin sandwich. Basically, the sandwich was a large piece of pork tenderloin that was breaded, then fried and served up on a bun. Created by a restaurateur named Nick Feinstein, he took the idea of veal sandwiches and replaced it with pork. The sandwich found great success in Indiana, achieving legendary status in the state. Fried sandwiches were not the only ones getting hyped up in the 70s. Iowa preferred the loose meat sandwich as a staple lunch food. Much like the famous Sloppy Joe's, loose meat sandwich was made using seasoned ground beef that was served between a set of buns. The sandwich was a little dry because there was no sauce, but the cheap price tag made up for it. The barbecue craze in Kansas peaked in the 1970s, so it is no wonder that they preferred the barbecue brisket sandwich. Sliced barbecue brisket served on a bun with sauce had every local in Kansas asking for more, even after their lunch breaks were over. The barbecue sauce in the sandwich was a real crowd pleaser as it completed the sandwich and made the taste delectable. Fried chicken is not the only iconic food Kentucky is known for, as the hot brown also originates from Kentucky. Originally created by Fred Schmidt, a chef at Brown Hotel in Louisville, the hot brown is an open-faced turkey sandwich topped with bacon, tomatoes, and Mornay sauce. Another cheap lunch item on this list is the Louisiana po' boy sandwich. Po', short for poor boy, was a sandwich typically filled with fried shrimp, oysters, or roast beef, and was served on French bread. Speaking of seafood, how could we forget the iconic lobster rolls from Maine? Fresh lobster meat served on a split top roll with a light butter and parsley dressing was a dream lunch for people in Maine. This heavenly creation was a fan favorite in Maine, where the cheapest seafood options before lobster roll was tinned fish. Keeping the seafood trend of the 70s going, crab soup from Maryland became quite famous amongst locals this year. Crab used in this soup came straight from Chesapeake Bay, which was a local specialty in Maryland, making the soup an instant hit amongst locals looking for a good lunch that tasted just like home. It seemed that soups were quite a crowd favorite in the 1970s, as clam chowder was another iconic lunch served up in Massachusetts. Imagine enjoying a hot, creamy bowl of soup made with fresh clams, potatoes, onions, and a side of oyster crackers during your lunch break. Soups were not the only lunches rising in ranks across the states, as Michigan's Coney Dog was one of the most iconic lunches in America. Nicknamed Coney Dog, this hot dog was a beef frankfurter, wrapped in a steamed bun and topped with savory beef chili, mustard, and onions. Minnesota created the iconic Juicy Lucy cheeseburger that needs no introduction today. Created when a local customer requested for 2 hamburger patties with a slice of cheese stuffed in the middle, the Juicy Lucy met with instant success when it appeared on menus in 1960. The Catfish Po' Boy was lesser known across America and more of a Mississippi special. A true working-class lunch, the Catfish Po' Boy sandwich was born during a strike when workers were protesting for rights. During this time, local restaurant owners Benny and Clovis Martin gave out free sandwiches made with fried catfish, lettuce, tomato, and remoulade sauce. Since then, these sandwiches were sold at a cheap price during lunch breaks. Missouri's iconic lunch was neither a sandwich nor a soup, it was the St. Louis-style pizza. This thin crust pizza, topped with Provel cheese and cut in squares, found popularity with the locals of Missouri who preferred square pizza during lunch breaks. The thin, cracker-like crust made for a light and airy pizza that was perfect to snack on before going back to work. The bison burger is definitely not something you will be snacking on. Montana's favorite lunch in the 70s and even today is a burger made using lean bison meat sourced directly from Montana. Runza was a famous sandwich in Nebraska during the 1970s, attaining the status of being an iconic lunch. Though the sandwich originated from Europe, it found a new home in Nebraska where people started referring to the sandwich as a regional dish. Nevada's casinos created the iconic 50-cent shrimp cocktail that attracted heaps of people in 1970. Everything from affordability to taste drew people from all over the country to visit Nevada for its simple and unique shrimp cocktail. The shrimp cocktail was also one of the first seafood lunch items in Nevada, thus why it gained popularity. Massachusetts was not the only state chowing down on hearty chowder, as New Hampshire was also consuming this iconic soup in the 70s. Recipe-wise, the chowder in Hampshire was different as they used more fish than clams in their soup. Taylor ham sandwich in New Jersey was another iconic sandwich that people loved eating during their lunch hour. Invented by Senator John Taylor in Hamilton Square, the sandwich truly found popularity in the 1970s when restaurants put this Taylor ham, egg, and cheese sandwich on their menus. Green chilies are an iconic part of New Mexico cuisine, so it is no surprise that the green chili cheeseburger was a go-to lunch for locals in the 70s. This was a fusion burger topped with a chili stew made out of green chilies and melted cheese on a patty. Though a heavy lunch, the tangy and spicy variation of cheeseburgers was just too tempting for people. New York is well known for its pastrami on rye sandwich that was popularized during the 70s as a popular deli lunch that was affordable. Soon enough, delis across New York served the sandwich at a cheap price, making workers grab the sandwich during their breaks. North Carolina loves pork more than deli meats, so it's no surprise that the local pulled pork BBQ sandwich was a lunch staple here. As BBQ restaurants started gaining popularity in the 70s, North Carolina's slow-cooked, spicy, and vinegary pulled pork sandwich was one of the most iconic ways to eat pork. Locals would pair shredded pork with barbecue sauce and put it between 2 slices of bread, and lunch would be served. During lunch times in North Dakota, making knoofle soup was common in the 70s. Dakota had excess wheat production during this year, and the best way to use the flour was to create a creamy soup with dumplings and potatoes. It helped that knoofle soup was the perfect remedy for North Dakota's freezing temperatures, so every household was serving this perfectly balanced soup as a lunch meal. Cincinnati chili was the most interesting lunch item Ohio had to offer. Chili served over spaghetti and topped with cheese, onions, and beans was the new way to eat spaghetti. Cincinnati chili only ever gained popularity in Ohio, unable to find fans in other states, but it still remains an iconic creation because of the unique flavors the dish offered. The chicken fried steak lunch was once the favorite dish of Oklahoma. This thinly pounded chicken that is breaded and fried was served with gravy to chicken fried steak enthusiasts across Oklahoma. Mostly popular during lunch hours, this dish was always on the specials menu. Restaurants in Oklahoma would make it a point to list this dish down as a steak, not fried chicken. Soon enough, this dish was strong competition to regular beef steaks. Fresh Dungeness crab served on toasted bread was Oregon's top pick when it came to unique lunches in the 70s. There was an ongoing debate in Oregon about the best way to eat Dungeness crab meat. Then came the crab sandwich, served on bread or a roll, which won people's hearts. It was not long before this sandwich was renowned statewide. You cannot mention Pennsylvania without the Philly cheesesteak. Thinly sliced steak with cheese on a hoagie roll was the invention of brothers Pat and Harry Oliveri. By the 70s, the Philly cheesesteak sandwich was the go-to order for every person looking for a filling lunch. Found at just about any deli, the sandwich was an invention Pennsylvania is proud of. Stuffies are quite a unique lunch served up in Rhode Island. Served in clamshells, the dish is made of chopped clams mixed with several spices and bread, then it is baked. While Rhode Island has several seafood dishes available, Stuffies were easy to eat and were a quick snack for those on a tight schedule, making them a popular lunch food. Found in the Charleston Recipes Cookbook in the 1950s, shrimp and grits emerged as a popular lunch in South Carolina. The creamy shrimp and grits recipe embedded in one of the pages would become the most popular breakfast and lunch food in households across South Carolina. In 1976, shrimp and grits was even declared as South Carolina's official state food. Chislic is a dish unique to South Dakota and was perfect for lunch hours. With a simple preparation of cutting up red meat into cubes, then either grilling it or deep frying the meat, the dish would be ready in a matter of minutes and served quickly. Chislic was brought to the state by a German-Russian man named John Hellwarth, who popularized the dish amongst locals. Tennessee's Nashville hot chicken was served to hungry workers during lunch break. The commercialization of fried chicken restaurants in the 70s allowed for this spicy, crispy fried chicken to grow in popularity amongst people in Tennessee. The spicy fried chicken was a local soul food that many African-American working-class communities consumed in Tennessee before hot chicken was commercialized into the American market. Who thought Frito chips could be a main ingredient in an iconic lunch, but the Frito pie from Texas proves otherwise. A dish made from Frito's corn chips topped with chili, cheese, and onions was created by Frito's owner's mother. Frito pie gained fame due to the affordability and availability of the ingredients. A rather negative-sounding lunch, the funeral potatoes tasted delicious to everyone who tried it. A cheesy potato casserole made with potato mash and vegetables was a go-to dish at gatherings. The leftovers would often be packed as lunch for people the next day, which is why these potatoes earned their spot as iconic lunch meals. Today, when you think of funeral potatoes, people have nothing but positive things to say. Now, we really have no explanation for how the cheddar and apple sandwich was a fan favorite in Vermont. This sandwich was made with sharp Vermont cheddar and crisp apple slices and is said to be inspired by cheddar cheese on apple pies. Taste-wise, the sandwich was interesting, both sweet and savory, but most people added roasted turkey to their lunch to enhance the flavor. Virginia's Brunswick stew originated from the state and was famous because it was once made with squirrel meat. As restaurants looked to add the dish to their lunch menus, they had to find a way across the use of squirrels. Since then, the hearty stew is made using chicken, vegetables, and beans. Locals enjoyed the taste a lot and adopted the new recipe, making Brunswick stew a local delicacy. While the rest of the country was making cheeseburgers and fried chicken sandwiches, Washington created the salmon burger. In the 70s, this burger was particularly popular amongst people who enjoyed fish cakes. It was basically a fish cake made with fresh salmon stuffed between bread in a hamburger style and served with tartar sauce. The burger was a welcome change from normal cheeseburgers, which is why it is so notable. Soft rolls stuffed with pepperonis were West Virginia's favorite lunch. Pepperoni rolls first emerged as a popular lunch that coal miners would eat as the protein and fats would keep them energized. In the 70s, local bakeries started producing pepperoni rolls and selling them to locals, cementing it as regular lunch in West Virginia. Wisconsin's beer cheese soup was an interesting soup rendition that was a staple lunch in the state. Originating from Germany, the creamy soup made with beer and cheddar cheese made its way into America through cookbooks. The chicken fried steak sandwich in Wyoming was a variation of chicken steaks that found success in many states. During the 70s, chicken steaks were gaining fame, and restaurants in Wyoming decided to put together a sandwich topped with gravy and stuffed with breaded fried chicken. Do you think these lunches should be popularized again? If so, like the video and subscribe for more.